Now, we're diving into a topic that's been making waves in global economics and geopolitics. Vietnam's incredible rise as a manufacturing powerhouse and what it means for us in India. As we navigate our own ambitions to become a global manufacturing hub, Vietnam's success is something we can't ignore. It's attracting billions in investment, hosting tech giants, and drawing world leaders to Hanoi. Let's break it down and explore how Vietnam's growth is reshaping the region and challenging us to step up our game. In 2023, Vietnam saw a massive surge in foreign direct investment, around $37 billion, a 32% jump from the previous year. This wasn't a fluke. Global corporations are flocking to Vietnam, drawn by its low costs, strategic location, and pro-business policies. Tech giants like Apple, Intel, and Samsung have set up major operations there. Samsung alone is a juggernaut, producing nearly a quarter of Vietnam's total exports. That's right, one company accounts for a huge chunk of their economy. These firms are embedding themselves deeply in Vietnam, turning it into a hub for high-tech manufacturing. For us in India, this is a wake-up call. Vietnam's ascent is starting to overshadow our own manufacturing goals, and it raises big questions about how we compete and what we can learn from their success. The world's leaders have taken notice of Vietnam's rise, and Hanoi has become a diplomatic hotspot. In May 2025, French President Emmanuel Macron made a historic visit, the first by a French president in nearly a decade. He inked 14 major deals worth over $10 billion, covering everything from Airbus aircraft to defense, satellites, and nuclear energy. This wasn't just about business. It was France staking a claim in its former colony amid U.S. trade pressures on both Europe and Vietnam. Macron's trip followed U.S. President Joe Biden's visit in September 2023, when he elevated U.S.-Vietnam ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Vietnam's highest diplomatic status, reserved for its closest allies like China and Russia. Biden secured deals on semiconductors and critical minerals, signaling that Washington sees Vietnam as a key player in securing supply chains and countering China's influence in Asia. China's President Xi Jinping wasn't far behind, visiting Hanoi in late 2023 and again in April 2025, where he oversaw 45 cooperation agreements, including plans for cross-border railways, and even introducing Chinese-made passenger jets to Vietnam. South Korea's president also visited in 2023, upgrading ties and pledging billions in aid. Vietnam's economic clout is pulling in global powers, and it's clear they're all vying for influence in this rising star. So, what's driving this corporate stampede to Vietnam? It's the China Plus One strategy, companies diversifying away from China to avoid risks from U.S., China trade tensions, and geopolitical uncertainties. Apple, for instance, has made Vietnam its fourth largest supply hub globally, with 35 vendors producing AirPods, iPads, and Apple Watches. By 2025, analysts predict Vietnam will manufacture 20% of all iPads and Apple Watches and a whopping 65% of AirPods. When Apple's CEO Tim Cook visited Vietnam's Prime Minister in April 2024, he doubled down, promising even more investment. Foxconn, Apple's key supplier, is building new factories in northern Vietnam to assemble iPads and MacBooks. 2023 marked the first time MacBooks were made outside China, in Vietnam's Bac Giang province. Samsung's been in Vietnam since the late 2000s, investing over $18 billion and producing nearly half its global smartphones there. They've even opened a major R&D center in Hanoi and are expanding into semiconductors and OLED displays. Intel's running its largest global assembly and testing facility in Ho Chi Minh City, with plans for a possible $1 billion expansion. Beyond tech, companies like Nike, Adidas, and Lego are pouring in. Lego's building a $1 billion carbon-neutral factory, and even Chinese EV maker BYD is setting up shop to produce electric cars and batteries. Vietnam's youthful workforce, improving infrastructure, and dense supplier networks make it a magnet for these firms. Their electronics exports are soaring, with high-tech goods making up 40% of their manufacturing output, compared to just 9% for us in India. Vietnam's clearly winning the race to become a global manufacturing hub, and we need to take note. Geopolitics is a big part of Vietnam's success. The U.S. is pushing friendshoring, encouraging companies to move production to allies like Vietnam and US to reduce reliance on China. Biden's 2023 partnership upgrade with Vietnam wasn't just symbolic. It came with deals to boost semiconductor and mineral supply chains, positioning Vietnam as a critical piece in Washington's strategy to counter China. Japan's been helping its companies relocate to Vietnam with subsidies, while South Korea's giants like Samsung and LG have made Vietnam their manufacturing base. The EU's free trade agreement with Vietnam, in place since 2020, has slashed tariffs, boosting Vietnam's exports to Europe by over 15% in early 2024. Vietnam's also part of major trade pacts like RCEP and CPTPP, giving it access to markets like the US, EU, China, and Japan with low tariffs. We, on the other hand, opted out of RCEP and are still negotiating with the EU, which puts us at a disadvantage. Vietnam's 15-plus free trade agreements make it a plug-and-play export platform, something we're still working to achieve. Here's the twist. Even China's fueling Vietnam's rise, despite their historical rivalry. Vietnam imports heavily from China, $30 billion in goods in Q1 2025 alone, using Chinese inputs to power its exports, like the $31.4 billion it sent to the US in the same period. Chinese companies hit by US tariffs are setting up factories in Vietnam to dodge duties, bringing billions in investment. During Xi's April 2025 visit, he pushed for deeper supply chain ties, offering loans for railways and pitching Chinese-made jets. This shows China's using Vietnam's export machine to navigate global trade challenges, keeping Vietnam economically tethered despite their tensions. For us, this is a complex picture. China's involvement in Vietnam's growth highlights the interconnectedness of global supply chains, something we're also trying to tap into. So, what does this mean for us in India? Vietnam's rise is a challenge, but it's also a lesson. Their success shows the power of strategic trade deals, a welcoming business environment, and leveraging geopolitical shifts. We're making strides with initiatives like Make in India and developing ports like Chabahar. But Vietnam's integrated supplier networks and export-friendly policies give it an edge. Their high-tech export share dwarfs ours, and their ability to attract tech giants is something we're still chasing. But we have strengths: our massive market, growing tech sector, and deepening ties with the US, Japan, and others through forums like the Quad. The question is how we build on these to compete, not just with Vietnam, but in a world where supply chains are shifting fast. Thanks for joining me today as we explored Vietnam's manufacturing boom and its implications for us. It's a wake-up call to sharpen our policies, deepen our global partnerships, and seize the opportunities in this changing landscape.